Welcome everybody to the November 21st, 2025 SKIP Executive Board meeting. We'll go ahead and call this to order and look to Claire to call the roll.
City of Auburn, Nancy Backus. Not here. City of Kent, Dana Ralph.
I am here.
City of Burien, Liz Steed. She's taking a well-deserved vacation, so we have Anya Zupancic.
Here.
Thank you. City of Covington, Christina Soltis. She let me know she wouldn't be able to attend today, and I don't believe we have an alternate either. So City of Des Moines, Jean Axiger. I see you, Jean.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Great, thank you. City of Federal Way, Brian Davis. Brian let me know he's not able to attend today, so we have Angelina Allen PC with us.
Hello, everybody. Present.
Thank you. City of Maple Valley, Victoria Schroff.
Here.
Welcome. City of Normandy Park, Eric Zimmerman.
I'm present.
Thank you. City of Renton, Carmen Rivera. I see you there. I heard you earlier.
If my mute button would work with me, yes, I am here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. City of SeaTac, James Lovell.
I'm here.
Welcome. And City of Tukwila, Thomas McLeod or Dennis Martinez, let me know that neither of them would be able to attend today. And then King County, Sonari Marshall.
I'm here.
Thank you. And that's it.
All right, thank you. So the roll call is an introduction of our executive members, but we also have our executive board members, but we've also got others in attendance that we would love to recognize and hear from. I believe we've got Maria Arns from our advisory board in attendance. Maria, you want to pop on and introduce yourself?
Thank you. I just want to thank you all for letting me be here. I know it's going to be a great discussion. I know there are going to be some really positive decisions made today.
Thanks. Well, thank you so much for your work on the advisory board and for joining us this afternoon. Claire, would you like to help recognize our staff work group members?
Certainly. I see Angie. Do you want to start? And I'll call on the next person.
There's a little bit of a pause today for some reason. I'm having the same problem Carmen's having. Angie Mathias, Long Range Planning Manager for the City of Renton. Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, and Laurel.
Hi, Laurel Humphrey, Legislative Analyst for the City of Tukwila. Thank you.
Thanks. And Marina.
Good afternoon, Marina Hansen. I'm the Human Services Manager for the City of Kent. Thanks.
Welcome. And I don't see any other folks unless I'm missing. Several of our alternates serve as staff work group members as well, so they're also here. All right, that's it, Vice Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So next item on our agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone signed up or has anyone submitted written comment?
They have not.
Okay, and we will move right on to our first action item, which is would be a motion to approve our October 17th, 2025 meeting minutes. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes before we call for a motion?
Dorsal has his hand up.
Thank you. Dorsal.
Sorry to interject, but I just wanted to identify that item 3 in the minutes, the header is incorrect. It incorrectly states that the minutes that were approved were the July ones. The information below is correct, but we just need to modify the header as part of the motion to correct it.
Perfect. We will go ahead and note that. If that's the only thing that I'm seeing, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes with that change? Anyone?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. We've got a motion from Jean and a second from James. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Carmen, aye.
Okay, thank you. Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. Those meeting minutes are approved. Next item is agenda modifications. Claire, do we have any changes to the agenda?
We do not.
All right. We're going to jump right into board business at this point. The first item we have for board business today, TWG potential award reallocation. So the TWG development, which is up on the West Hill in Kent, was previously awarded 1.94 million from 2023 and 2024 housing capital funds due to multiple factors, including being ineligible for Washington State Housing Finance Commission funding, some difficulty finding securing other funding, and the listing of the site for sale. There is concern about the viability of this project. Following the executive board's August discussion, we are awaiting the outcome of the application to Amazon's Housing Equity Fund, and a decision is expected this month. As TWG has indicated, the project is not viable without it. So it will not move forward should they not receive that Amazon money. Today, we're going to consider and adopt criteria to rescind that award. Claire, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So the agenda packet for this meeting, for this agenda topic, was sent by me on Friday, November 14th at 12:30 p.m. And that should be in your inbox. So the memo included with detail on the agenda topic, in addition to all the other items, are things that we'll talk about today. So I'll review the information included in that memo for you. So TWG Development was awarded $1,940,000 from the 2023 and 2024 funding rounds of the SKIP Housing Capital Fund for the construction of Pandian at Star Lake in Kent. TWG is currently prohibited from accessing any Washington State Housing Finance Commission financial resources for 3 years. And the project has struggled to get additional funding commitments. TWG has listed the site at Pandian at Star Lake for sale. Simultaneously, TWG applied for funding in October 2025 from Amazon's Housing Equity Fund, with a decision expected by the end of November of this year. So in August 2025, the executive board agreed to wait until the outcome of the Amazon award was known until making a decision about the SKIP award. And the SKIP awards to TWG must be used by February 2027. Otherwise, they are reallocated back to the SKIP Housing Capital Fund for allocation to other projects. TWG has communicated that without Amazon funding, the project is not viable. And if the TWG awards are rescinded by the time materials are due for City Council action for the 2025 Housing Capital Fund allocations, the funding would be reallocated to the 2025 funding round. If the TWG awards are rescinded after City Council action is required for the 2025 Housing Capital Fund allocations, the funding would be reallocated to the 2026 funding round. If the funds are not rescinded and the project is not viable, the funds would be reallocated back to SKIP in February 2027. So in your memo and on your slide, you'll see a recommendation from me to adopt criteria under which you would reallocate the TWG awards. So I propose that one of the following must be true to rescind or reallocate the awards. TWG wasn't successful in their application to Amazon for the project this funding round, or TWG sells the property, or TWG forfeits the awards and basically tells us that they just can't make it work. So the pros and cons from SKIP's perspective are listed on the slide. 2 pros include funding would be reallocated to projects ready to move forward. And we have a recommendation ready from the advisory board modeling potential reallocation this funding round, which we'll go over in more detail under our next agenda topic. One con to call out is that TWG wouldn't have the award for Pandian should they figure out an alternate plan before February 2027. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions at this time, Vice Chair.
All right, are there any questions regarding this item? Okay, I am just Victoria.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. One thing, and I'm sure we discussed this, but I don't remember. What was the reason that they're not eligible for the Washington State Finance Commission funding for 3 years?
Yeah, so TWG is a large national developer. They have a lot of projects. One of the projects in Washington State, they did not access their LIHTC credits through the commission in time by their deadline, and they had to receive a new allocation in a different funding year, which meant that there were less funds available for other projects because when the funding goes away in those cases, it's just gone. And so it put a real burden on the commission and their ability to make awards on those LIHTC credits. And because of that, they had a few conditions, and one of those was that TWG wouldn't be able to access commission funds for 3 years.
Thank you.
And that project that was under question did receive the allocation from the commission, and that was in order to basically save that project.
Okay. I am just going to, for the record, a little bit frustrated with the order of how this has come now before the executive board. I feel like this is a decision the executive board should have made prior to it being forwarded to the advisory board for conversation and recommendation. We are here now in this order, so I'll be supporting a motion, but I just wanted to say that I'm a bit frustrated with the order of operations on this. So I'm not seeing any questions. The motion before us is to adopt the criteria under which SKIP would rescind the 2 SKIP Housing Capital Fund awards made to TWG for the Pandian at Star Lake project. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second.
All right, we've got a motion from James and a second from Eric. Any discussion? Jean?
What effect is this action going to have on their ability to gain the Amazon grant? I mean, are we effectively killing the project?
No, we are not. So right now, Amazon has their application under consideration, which Amazon right now is under the correct assumption that the project has a SKIP award of almost $2 million. So Amazon is considering that and in all of the factors, whether or not to fund this project. That's a tiny, small part of the criteria they're going to be using to determine whether to support the project or not. So what we're saying here is if Amazon funds this project, TWG will keep the award. We're going to keep, moving with them and see where we can get, given the timeline. If they don't receive the Amazon award this funding round, TWG has told us that the project just isn't viable. And so we wanted to give them the opportunity to learn the outcome of the Amazon award. And right now we know the property is up for sale. So they're trying to, figure out their best course of action given all the variables. Does that help, Jean?
Yeah, it's just, I'm just concerned that our action could have the effect of, have Amazon saying it's a no-go.
Well, given
Or are
that,
we explaining this, excuse me, are we explaining this as simply a contingency?
yeah, this is a contingent action that you're taking right now. So we're not rescinding the award right now. We're saying if Amazon decides not to fund it, then we will rescind the award because there isn't a viable project.
Okay. Sonari.
Is there a world in which they get the Amazon award and still move forward with selling the property?
Yeah, probably.
Just curious. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And in which case, someone else would own the property. They would no longer have site control, and the terms of our award wouldn't really be in place anymore. Is how I would read that. I mean, I will just say the commission doesn't do this often in terms of penalizing developers like this. And the reason they take these kinds of actions is because of the huge ripple effect it has on the pipeline. So if they had to take credits from a different year than they originally allocated, one, that is money lost to the overall system, and two, that is dollars out of a different developer's pocketbook while they're paying carrying costs on their property because they're not able to get access to the credits that year. And so, there are consequences essentially, and I would support this as written.
James, I thought I saw your hand up. Do you still have a question or
I was going to add,
discussion?
I was going to rephrase things to see if it helped with clarification, but I think clarification has been arrived at without my support.
Perfect. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. I don't see any more hands raised. With that, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. That is going to bring us down to a bit happier news in our agenda, and that's the 2025 Housing Capital Fund recommended allocations. Today, we're going to consider and adopt the 2025 SKIP Housing Capital Funding recommendations. This marks our 4th year of providing this really game-changing funding to South King County. Very, very excited about that. Following the application period, the SKIP Advisory Board completed its review in October and November and has recommended 2 scenarios for our adoption. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Claire to walk us through those scenarios.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So I am thrilled to be able to tell you that the SKIP Advisory Board has completed their review of applications submitted to SKIP's 2025 Housing Capital Fund, and that I am here today to present their funding recommendations for your consideration. The memo, which details the Advisory Board recommendations, was sent to you in your agenda packet on Friday, November 14th at 12:30 p.m. So you heard me express my deep gratitude to you all last meeting regarding your enthusiasm, commitment, and engagement in SKIP's Housing Capital Fund work. I would argue that this is the most important work that we do. We help make projects happen. We help create and preserve homes for the most vulnerable people in our South King County community. I was at a national conference earlier this week with affordable housing developers, lenders, and funders. It was mentioned over and over the importance of the local funding sources in funding affordable housing projects. When I described SKIP's model to folks, they were excited and a little jealous that they didn't have access to such a funding source where they are located. Even when I mentioned that we were a small local public funder and only pool about $3 million a year, their reaction was very validating. They said that those types of dollars are crucial to making their projects viable. And it's true. Affordable housing projects need every bit of funding they can get, and our contribution is important. So again, I want to thank everyone here for their work in making SKIP's Housing Capital Fund work such a success. And along these lines, I have an exciting announcement regarding funding available this year. For those paying close attention, you might have noticed the dollar amount available in your November memo was higher than the memo I submitted to you in October. This is because Monday night of this week, Maple Valley City Council took action to allocate $500,000 in House Bill 1590 funds to this year's SKIP funding round. So further, beginning in 2026 and ongoing annually, they voted to allocate 50% of their 60% House Bill 1590 set aside for capital to SKIP. So I want to thank Councilmember Victoria Schroff for her leadership and representing SKIP to her council in such a positive and uplifting way, highlighting the importance of the SKIP partnership. And a big thank you to the City of Maple Valley for pooling these important resources with our SKIP coalition. So thank you, Victoria, and please extend our sincere thanks to your council. All right, so the goals for today, we are going to review the advisory board's recommendations. We'll do a final summary review of the projects. And then you will adopt a funding recommendation. You can adopt the recommendations as is, as the advisory board has transmitted them, or you can amend them, or you can reject them and send them back to the advisory board. So in terms of timeline, just to refresh you on this process, we spent the summer doing pre-application meetings. We reviewed the applications with the advisory board in October, and earlier this month, the advisory board made their final recommendations based on several funding scenarios. Today, it's the hope that you'll finalize the recommendation. Earlier next year, the participating city councils will take action to concur with the executive board's recommendation. So in terms of the items the advisory board considered, when the projects were presented to the advisory board, there were several items that they did consider. In addition to the recommended funding amount, they were asked to discuss their rationale and any special conditions they wanted included. As the administrator of the contracts, they also supported my ability to add the standard and special conditions. They understand that by funding a project that is applying to other funders as well, SKIP funds serve as a green light for that project and says to those other funders that this is a priority for South King County. Project readiness was a consideration. That means, is it ready to go next year, or is it going to take a little bit to get it going? They considered how well aligned each project was with SKIP's priorities, our funding guidelines, and our underwriting benchmarks. They understood the importance of geographic distribution of SKIP projects and that it is a high priority for the executive board and our member jurisdictions. I discussed my preference to contract for at least about $1 million, and they considered how dependent a project is on other funding sources. And they closely considered a project's suitability for partial funding, as our funding amount often mean that we can only fully fund one project and provide the remaining funds to another project as a partial award. So since our advisory board is comprised not only of passionate community members of South King County, but also subject matter experts employed by organizations affiliated with affordable housing production and preservation, there were a couple disclosed conflicts of interest that I want to make you aware of. 2 members are employed by project applicants on an application. Those members did not participate in the evaluation of the projects, the discussion or deliberation, nor vote on the final recommendation. 2 additional advisory board members had potential conflicts of interest. One member is employed by an organization that refers clients to one applicant's organization. And one member is employed by an organization that worked on 2 of the project applicant's proposals, but did not directly work on the proposal themselves. These members participated in deliberations and voted on the recommendation. The disclosures happened at the beginning of the past 2 advisory board meetings and prior to the vote being taken. So with those potential conflicts of interest disclosed, let's move on to the 2 funding recommendations from the advisory board. So the advisory board made several funding recommendations based on different funding scenarios, given all the moving parts this year. For awareness, they actually made 4 recommendations, but only 2 are relevant as of today because the other 2 have been taken care of with Maple Valley's additional contribution. So you are being asked to consider and adopt 2 funding recommendations. As described in the motion language in your agenda, a scenario 1 or the primary recommendation will be the version that is submitted to your councils unless the TWG award is rescinded by December 31st, in which case scenario 2 or the secondary recommendation will be submitted. So on the slide is scenario 1 or the primary recommendation, which assumes the TWG award is not reallocated this funding round. Or in other words, we wouldn't have the TWG award funds to use this round. Scenario 1 includes funding made available from member contributions this year, including those funds from Maple Valley that we talked about, funds that carried over from last year, and the small amount of interest earnings you allocated this year that was left over after the reserve set aside. Under scenario 1, the advisory board recommends funding for 3 projects totaling $3.9 million. All 3 are new construction projects, and you can see the breakdown by funding source by project on the slide. This recommendation leaves a balance of $314 in Substitute House Bill 1406 funds, $31,665 in House Bill 1590 funds, and $1,024 in general funds in the Housing Capital Fund that will roll over into the next funding round in 2026. The balance included on the first page in the narrative of the memo was the balance based off the funding we made available this year, but not the entire balance of the Housing Capital Fund. The numbers I just cited are the complete ones and will be included in the final memo to city councils. Scenario 2 includes all the funding from scenario 1, but adds the reallocated TWG awards of about $1.9 million in those House Bill 1590 funds. Under scenario 2, the advisory board recommends funding for 4 projects totaling $5.8 million. 3 are new construction and 1 is rehabilitation. As you can see with the addition of the TWG funds, the African Diaspora Cultural Anchor Village would receive almost $1 million more than in scenario 1. Steel Lake would receive a tad more than in scenario 1, but from a different funding source. And Maple Lane Estates, a multi-service center rehabilitation project, would be fully funded. Steelhouse would remain fully funded as this was the advisory board's top priority project. So let's go through each project very briefly to refresh your memory and hear the funding rationale and special conditions, which are requirements of our interlocal agreement. So this is a 129 unit new construction 4% low income housing tax credit rental project with a mix of studios to 4 bedrooms for households earning 30%, 40%, 50%, and 60% AMI located in SeaTac. 55 units will be set aside for families with children and 13 units set aside for households with a physical disability. The project aims to respond to community members' desire for a central anchor for South King County's African diaspora, immigrant and refugee community. The project is a partnership between African Community Housing and Development, or ACHD, and Mercy Housing Northwest. So the funding requested was $3.5 million. Under scenario 1, the advisory board recommends 1.2 million, and under scenario 2, 2.1 million. In terms of the funding rationale, the advisory board felt that the project was responsive to the African diaspora, immigrant, and refugee community needs. That ACHD is a by and for organization. And for those that aren't familiar, that is, those are organizations that are operated by and for the communities they serve. It's a Department of Commerce designation. Their primary mission and history is serving a specific community. They are culturally based, directed, and substantially controlled by individuals from the populations that they serve. The advisory board also liked the project because it supports large intergenerational family sizes with 2, 3, and 4 bedroom sizes. The project sponsors did extensive community engagement. The location is in SeaTac, very near the light rail station and to the airport. And the project had strong alignment with SKIP priorities. Special conditions are that it would be a deferred loan. The funding from SKIPS, the commitment would last 36 months. And that there would be 13 units for individuals with a physical disability and 55 units for families with children. So Steelhouse is a new construction rental project made up of 6 3-bedroom townhomes for families exiting homelessness or at risk of homelessness who earn up to 50% AMI in Renton. The property was purchased in 2016 and includes a duplex built in 1943, operating as transitional housing. The transitional housing program will end before the project begins, so no relocation will be needed before demolition of the duplex. Most case management and supportive services will take place on site at the family's housing unit. St. Stephen Housing Association is the developer. And this is the second time the project sponsor has applied to the SKIP Housing Capital Fund for the project, and the City of Renton has committed $500,000 to the project since the previous application was received. So in terms of the funding recommendation, the project requested just over $1.8 million, and under both advisory board recommendation scenarios, they want to fully fund the project. In terms of the funding rationale, they liked that the project serves families experiencing homelessness. The City of Renton made a direct financial contribution to the project already. The project is pretty shovel ready, beginning construction in April of next year, pending a $1 million Commerce Award, which is under consideration right now. And I would say the $1 million is a pretty small amount compared to a lot of applicants' requests to Commerce. So, the project has been in the works for 8 years and has good alignment with SKIP priorities. Special conditions would be it's a secured grant. The funding is committed for 3 years. And that the 6 units would be set aside for families exiting homelessness or are at risk of homelessness, earning no more than 50% AMI. So Mental Health Housing Foundation's Steel Lake Affordable Housing is a 20-unit rental project for individuals with severe and persistent mental illness with incomes at 30% and 50% AMI in Federal Way. This is the first phase of a 2-phased new construction project. The second phase would add an additional 10 units for a total of 30 units. The first phase will construct 4 2-bedroom units and 16 1-bedroom units, including 1 manager unit. Residents live independently, receiving services from community behavioral health providers off-site. So the project requested $1.5 million from SKIP, and under scenario 1, the advisory board recommends $922,000, and under scenario 2, $1 million. So in scenario 1, the $922,000, it would be sourced from the $1,406, and in scenario 2, it would be sourced from the House Bill 1590 funds, which the project is eligible for. So the advisory board liked that the project addresses a critical need for housing dedicated to individuals with mental illness, that the project provides deep affordability, up to 30% and 50% AMI. The project would demonstrate early support to other funders. This project applied to all the public funders this year, but their timeline for beginning construction isn't until, I want to say, early 2027. So this would show, that we are on board, and we want others to get on board as well. The project sponsors have strong relationships with behavioral health agencies, and we have strong alignment with the SKIP priorities. This would be a deferred contingent forgivable loan. 36 months our funding would be committed for, and that 20 units in phase 1 would be for individuals with severe and persistent mental illness earning no more than 50% AMI. And then the multi-service centers, Maple Lane Estates contains 16 two-bedroom, one-bathroom units across 4 buildings, serving households earning 30% and 50% AMI. The buildings were constructed in 1992, and MSC has owned the property since 1994. The renovations are proposed to include replacement of siding, gutters, downspouts, railings, windows, sliding glass doors, front entry door replacement, recoding tenant decks, painting, exterior HVAC alterations, regrading areas adjacent to siding, and replacement of exterior entry doors. SKIP would be the sole funder on the rehabilitation of Maple Lane Estates, and we have done so for 2 other MSC projects previously, Victorian Place 2 in Des Moines, and the White River Apartments in Auburn. And this is located in Kent, if I forgot to mention. So the project did request $922,000. The advisory board recommended under scenario 1, they wouldn't be able to fund it. And then under scenario 2, with the reallocation of that TWG award, they would be able to fully fund the request. In terms of the funding rationale, the property is in need of rehabilitation to support the health and safety of the residents. That these are 2-bedroom sized units. The project provides deep affordability, up to 30% and 50% AMI. And that generally we know that there are limited funding sources available for preservation and rehab for these smaller properties. The project has strong alignment with SKIP priorities. And in terms of special conditions, this would be a secured grant. Funding would be available for 3 years, and that funding would be solely for the rehabilitation of the property with specific itemization of allowable expenses. So you can see these numbers here are the allocations by city, by project under scenario 1. This is for House Bill 1590. So you can see those totals here. And in the final memos that go to councils, I will format these and make them look a little prettier. So just for your awareness. And then the substitute House Bill 1406 funds, scenario 1, this is what the allocations would look like, supporting the Mental Health Housing Foundation's Steel Lake. And in scenario 2, the House Bill $1590 You can see the 3 projects being funded, ACHD's African Diaspora Cultural Anchor Village, Steel House, and Steel Lake. And you can see here the TWG award reallocated amount here. You can see the balance also on the far right that would carry over into next year. And then this is 1406 scenario 2. Instead of Steel Lake, the funding would support Maple Lane Estates.
Claire, I don't know if it's just on my screen, but it doesn't look like the slides are advancing.
Thank you. I'm on a new setup, so I was looking at one that was, and thank you. How embarrassing. Let's go back. Here we go. All right. Let's start here. All right, so under scenario 1 for House Bill 1590, the 3 cities listed here would be supporting these 2 projects, the Cultural Anchor Village and Steel House. This is the total the cities contributed this year. The carryover from 2024, that interest earnings that we allocated for this year's funding round, and this would be the amount left over in 1590 that carries over into next year. For 1406, same thing. So the majority of our members would be funding the Steel Lake project. You can see the total your city contributed and the carryover from 2024, the interest, and what would be left over. $314 would carry over into next year. In scenario 2 with the TWG award, Covington, Kent, and Maple Valley would be funding the Cultural Anchor Village, Steel House, and Steel Lake. And you can see the reallocated TWG amount here. Total contribution, the carryover from last year, the interest, and what we would have left over. And for scenario 2, for the $1,406, we would be funding Maple Lane Estates instead of Steel Lake. So same dollar amount allocations by city, just a different project. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right. Any questions for Claire on the recommendations and the scenarios? James.
Yeah, as I was looking through the packet, I wasn't seeing anyone who would be affected by the current HUD proposal that's been making the rounds that everyone's kind of freaked out about in the permanent supportive housing. I see there are supportive services in some areas, but they don't look like they're the ones that are going to be affected. And I know it's changed how folks are applying for capital throughout, well, probably the country. I'm not seeing anything there. Am I missing something, or does it seem like that won't have an impact here?
Yeah, it's my understanding that it won't have an impact. That's my understanding. So yeah. And I think a lot of applicants had that in mind too, right, as they're crafting these proposals.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, any other questions? All right, so thorough presentation. Claire, you answered everybody's questions ahead of time, so that's a nice thing. I'm going to go ahead and say the motion before us is to move and amend SKIP's 2025 Primary Housing Capital Fund Allocation Recommendation and Secondary Housing Capital Fund Allocation Recommendation with direction to forward the primary allocation recommendation to member city councils participating in 2025 Housing Capital Funding Round, provided that should the TWG awards be rescinded by December 31st, 2025, the board direction is to forward the secondary allocation recommendation to member city councils participating in 2025 Housing Capital Round. It is a very long motion. very thorough. So that's the motion before us. Anyone like to make it?
Can I say so moved?
Yeah, yes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So motion from Eric, second from Victoria. Any discussion?
Like, this should have been in questions. I'm sorry, I'm
It's okay.
distracted this week. Did you share, did I miss it? Who else? There were 6 applications and there were 2 that were not moved forward.
Yeah. The 2 that didn't move forward were the 2 rehabilitation projects. One in Burien, it was the senior project by Catholic Community Services, and Bellwether's Renton Sage Apartments in Renton. And I think this year's funding round was hyper competitive, and we eventually had more funding than we thought we might, and we actually still don't actually know how much funding we have.
Sure.
But the advisory board went through and evaluated and had these projects come out on top. And I think they felt like the ones they were recommending were maybe needed our funding more or could benefit more from it. They liked the sentiment around there was a lot of equity discussion in project proposals and the importance of that. The projects that were also selected primarily have not had a SKIP funded project in them. And so, yeah, I think overall they felt like these were the strongest applications and the strongest projects that would benefit from SKIP's support.
Well, and if they were rehab, the 1590 funds are they eligible for rehab? They are not, correct?
So, so our attorney has advised that they can be used.
Oh,
so long as
okay.
special population. And AMI are adhered to.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. I just, as someone who reviews a lot of funding recommendations every year, I've gotten used to seeing the kind of who applied and then who is selected and not the list. So maybe just as a process improvement for next year, just including in the memo who the other ones were. I'm excited about this slate and really appreciate the geographic spread. Like Mayor Ralph, there was a year where it was like every project's in Kent almost, it felt like, and I like that we're seeing it spread throughout the region.
Yeah, so I would support that as a process improvement for next year. I'm not hearing much or any dissent from the advisory board's recommendation, but without that information, it makes it really challenging for this board to weigh in on any potential changes to that recommendation, and that I think we should look at doing differently for next year for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm struggling there too.
So
will do.
All right. Any other comments? We've got a motion and a second in front of us. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. So Claire, do you have everything that you need?
I do. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the SKIP biennial budget. During the development of our 5-year plan, a proposal was made to shift SKIP's work plan and budget to a biennial process, starting with the 27-28 cycle. Today, we'll discuss and confirm the board's interest in pursuing this biennial work plan and budget, which would require an amendment to our ILA. So want to make sure that we walk through this and board members are really clear on what our next steps are. and then be able to provide feedback to Claire as we move forward. But this is not an action item. It is an information only with the opportunity for questions and discussion. Claire, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So during the June 13th, 2025 Executive Board meeting, the board was presented with several recommendations on items to explore further as part of the SKIP 5-year plan development process. One of those recommendations was to transition to a biennial or 2-year budget and work plan. The SKIP staff work group recommended this transition to reduce the amount of time member jurisdictions spend on bringing this item to council each year and to provide SKIP staff with added capacity. A regional coalition for housing, or ARCH, recently transitioned to a biennial process with successful outcomes. The first SKIP biennial budget and work plan would begin January 1st, 2027 and last through December 31st, 2028. This schedule mirrors the biennial budget years of SKIP's administering agency, the City of Auburn. A transition to a biennial process would require an amendment to the SKIP interlocal agreement, or our ILA, and the ILA amendment would be presented to councils at the same time as the SKIP work plan and budget. If the executive board is supportive of the transition, a draft ILA amendment would be circulated to member jurisdictions' legal representatives in December, and SKIP's biennial work plan and budget development process would begin in early 2026 in a similar fashion as we have done in previous years. So Auburn's legal counsel has indicated the amendment would be straightforward, or at least as straightforward as an ILA amendment can be. So in terms of questions, I've got 3 questions here up on the screen, and Vice Chair would love your help facilitating that to get that feedback.
All right. Let me make this bigger so I can read those. So the first question in front of us is, are we supportive of SKIP transitioning to a biennial budget and work plan? I know it's how most of our councils probably operate. I can tell you, can't move to this quite a few years ago, and it really does streamline process, but give opportunity for sort of that mid biennium look up. Head nods, thumbs up, or opposition. Seeing some heads nodding. Not seeing any angry faces. There's some thumbs up. Victoria. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm a thumbs up, but also just with awareness that, as Claire mentioned earlier, like Maple Valley is switching to a percentage for our contribution. And I don't know if other jurisdictions are doing that. It just will make it a little difficult to pinpoint exactly what the dollar amount would be. So it wouldn't be precise, but I am a fan of, doing a biennial, as most of our jurisdictions do, but just wanted to know if that affects what this group thinks.
So the good news is that we don't actually budget Housing Capital Fund revenue. So it wouldn't impact this at all because the biennial budget just shows your operational contributions by city and our operating expenses. So the Housing Capital Fund budget is a totally separate entity, and so wouldn't be affected by this.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
Perfect. And we've got a comment from James in agreement and suspecting there will be additional information coming forward before we take a vote. And I would say that we'll definitely should have opportunity for additional discussion and questions. Moving on to the second one, should SKIP transition to a biennial budget process? Would you like a check-in in year 2 to confirm the year 2 budget and work plan? Same thing, looking for head nods, thumbs up. Seeing that, I would strongly agree with this one. I think that we absolutely have to have that mid by check-in. It's often, again, with most of our budgets, it's a truncated process, but that process exists, and we need to be double checking those assumptions and have an opportunity for emerging issues and things to be taking a look at. So any opposition to a mid-buy check-in? Okay, you guys are making this easy. Any additional information that you will need, maybe James, back to your original comment, are there specific things that you'd like for Claire to bring back, questions that you have?
I think my comment was really, I think there's going to be all these little questions about timing and operational, how it all plays out. I'm sure, Claire, when you bring this to us for action, that'll be addressed. So it's kind of like I don't when we get a little bit more detail on it, there may be additional questions, but right now I'm trusting, based on your pattern, you always bring us ample information to make good decisions. So I'm expecting that'll happen, and that any questions I have right now will already be answered before we take a vote.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Any additional input or requests on this item, Sonari?
It's not a request, just for Claire's awareness, really, is that while Arch did this, we still have to take the budget every year to council because our budget is now off cycle with everybody else's. So they would not commit the next biennium's funds ahead. And so, unfortunately, because of how we've changed our budget cycle to align with our new election cycle, that doesn't help, where I think all y'all are probably on the same cycle that we used to be. So it will be, in general, a reduced burden, just not necessarily for the county.
On so many levels, the county switch has gotten me messed up. I will tell you, I read things and I go, wait a second, oh, that's right. Yeah.
Same.
And Sonari, did Arch, were they able to budget for the 2 years with the county's operational contributions? Or okay.
Yeah, we essentially, we said yes. I voted on it as a board member, and then we still had to take it, one at a time, 1 year at a time. So we took it 25, and then we took it again this year with yours.
Okay, thank you.
Claire, anything else that you need from us at this point?
No, I think based on the staff work group's advice, given that the legal review time can take so long, if folks are supportive of this, which it sounds like just general support, in order to kind of make our deadline for adopting potentially this biennial work plan and budget, we would want to begin that legal review as soon as possible. And so if folks are supportive of this, I'll be putting together what that amendment to the ILA would look like, and then sharing it with our staff work group members to then share with your legal counsel for feedback and review, so that we can all try and get on the same page. Does that sound like an okay approach for folks?
Seeing some thumbs up. Any opposition? Okay. Looks like you've got the head nod to start down that path.
Super, thank you.
All right. Brings us to our next item on the agenda, which is our 2025 third quarter progress report. As you are all aware, our ILA provides that we have a quarterly update and progress report on the work that is being done, so that we can all make sure that we're on the same page with what's been happening and where we are headed. And today we're going to have the third quarter update, highlighting our accomplishments in July, August, and September. So Claire, back to you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna try and share my screen on this. Let's see. Right. All right. Are you able to see that okay? Front page. All right. All right, so the 2019 interlocal agreement requires the executive manager to submit quarterly budget performance and progress reports on the status of the work program to you, the executive board, and that it be shared with the legislative body of each of your jurisdictions. So as is our agreed upon practice, this will be sent to the staff work group members to distribute to your legislative bodies in the way that works best for each jurisdiction. One thing I want to mention is the version that was in your agenda packet had a small typo in it, so please don't distribute that version you received in your email. We've made the change in the version I'm screen sharing with you, and we'll transmit the correct version to the staff work group members to be distributed widely. So Q3 highlights include Skip's first legislative forum, our work on the Housing Capital Fund funding round, contracting on awarded projects, and the advisory board recruitment. So there's a lot of information that we've done here, and I would encourage you to review it in your own time as well. And want to come down to the budget. So beginning with operating revenue, so you can see your member jurisdictions contributions plus the $423,000 in interest earnings to date. So this should look familiar. These numbers haven't changed since Q2, except for those interest earnings line item there. So the Housing Capital Fund revenue contributions for the year are listed next to that in this column. And contributions totaled $3.4 million as of the end of September. Maple Valley's contribution will show up in our next report since that came in Q4. Operating expenses come down here, total $315,000. With an estimated ending fund balance of $966,000, which excludes the fund balance in reserve, which you adopted at $501,975. So even though this amount is for next year, we are setting it aside beginning now so that it's not showing up in fund balance since we are anticipating setting that aside. If we remove interest earnings from the fund balance, we are at a healthy $543,000 ending fund balance. So Housing Capital Fund expenses total $3.6 million. You can see that right here, with an estimated ending fund balance of $11 million. So you can see that down here. So the expenditure details for the capital fund can be seen in the below table right down here by project. So as of the end of September, we have recorded expenses on Victorian Place 2 in Des Moines, Burien Miller Creek in Burien, and Burien Family Housing in Burien. The project retainage of $15,000 is the amount that we set aside until a project has completed construction and has done a variety of other things for us to ensure that the project was completed. And so this $15,000 is actually the retainage for the Burien Miller Creek project. Showing up here, listed as an expenditure, really it has been set aside in reserve, but the way the accounting works, it's showing it as an expense. So wanted to be clear on that. And the Burien Family Housing retainage is actually already accounted for in this number. So please forgive us in our accounting here. We're trying to figure out the best way to do this with our administering agency, and the Miller Creek project was our first project, so I think we were trying to figure out how best to do this. So moving forward, we will have one way that we are accounting for the retainage. And then back in August, there was a request from the board to include an update on SKIP's awarded capital projects. So that can be seen on the third page of the report. And we will plan to attach the update along with the regular quarterly work plan and budget updates moving forward in the future. So these are all 7 of our awarded projects currently. We've got Multi-Service Center, Victorian Place 2, Burien Miller Creek, and you'll notice this looks like a new photo. So that project is coming along. You can see those beautiful homeownership units coming online. The Burien Family Housing, this is the latest rendering they sent us. And White River Apartments, we're finishing up our contract very soon. We should be closing in the next couple weeks. And then the Kent Multicultural Village and Skyway Affordable Housing. And then Pandian. So we still have Pandian on here just for awareness. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
All right. Lots of good things going on. Any questions from board members? All right. I am not seeing any. So thank you, Claire, for that update and all the work that's been done in the third quarter of this year. That brings us down to our last item on the agenda, which is updates and announcements. And so before I turn it back over to Claire for a few updates, any updates or for the good of the order from board members? Hey, James.
Yeah, I mean, I would, what does it tech people say? Double click. I would remind again, that I've talked about it very briefly earlier, but I know a few skip cities have permanent supportive housing in their limits, within city limits. And, the whole sector is, I would say, reeling right now from the HUD decision to limit how much of continuum of care dollars can go towards permanent supportive housing. It's a cut of 80%, 87% down to 30%. So for those of you who have, CTAC does not have any PSH inside city limits, so it's not as immediately impactful. But anytime there's a funding shift like this, I think all of our cities could see environmental changes, right, based on how well projects are able to, organizations are able to react and adapt and adjust funding. So just be ready for folks to come to bring this topic, I think, to your cities as far as housing is concerned. Just because I think it'll start rolling forward. I think pretty soon the impacts will start to kind of some of the solutions. There's still work being done. I think regionally, I know King County and the city of Seattle and other folks are meeting often as well, of course, as KCRHA to try to figure out how to move through this without, a lot of it is like freezing additional projects as opposed to trying to cut anything that's currently operational in as far as I've heard. So just good of the order, I think.
Yeah, no, thanks, James. It's a really good reminder. Important to keep top of mind as we're seeing this pretty impactful shift move forward. Sonari.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add a little detail to that since this is my life right now, pretty much every day, all day. So if I look distracted, it's because I'm thinking about what are we going to do. So the way this is rolling out, the cut from permanent housing, this is an annual award that we usually get from HUD, and in the past, 90% of our application is essentially renewal awards. So we keep carrying the same things forward because we use these funds from the county to pay for the operations, rent, and services in existing permanent supportive housing units. And so with a cut like this, that means we cannot rely on the existence of the federal funding. So we are right now working with all the partners that James just mentioned to try to figure out how do we fill those holes. It certainly has an impact on the new pipeline, but it does have a very real potential impact on existing projects. And when we look at additional just the county investments in that projects, we also have $48 million in capital invested in those buildings, and we have another $10 million in operating. And that's just the county, not counting the city of Seattle, which has even larger investments. And then there's over $200 million in private equity in those projects as well. And so, you know, it's a pretty huge impact if we're not able to keep those projects open. We are right now working with elected officials at all levels of government. Obviously, we're going through quite a big transition on our end, the county executive and the mayor of Seattle also changing. And so making sure we're keeping our new leadership informed and trying to figure out what the right approach is, which I think you'll hear more about as more things become public. But it is probably, of all the shifts, you know, outside of the impacts that we expect to see to Medicaid in the coming years, I think this is probably the biggest shift in our world from the changes in federal policy, and it's a pretty scary one. I want to thank you, James, for raising it. And I'm aware of at least one of the projects that we traditionally fund is in Auburn in terms of South County impacts. We also use a sizable portion of the funding for what's called scattered site. So we support the rent side for people who are already connected to behavioral health services. We have this kind of shelter plus care model, scattered site. So that is used throughout the county, sometimes in affordable income restricted buildings, sometimes in the private market. And that is also considered permanent housing by HUD. So we have some challenges ahead as we figure out how to navigate this.
Yeah, lots on everyone's plate when it comes to this, for sure. And I think that the unknown and the ever-changing nature of all this makes it just that much more complicated. So
absolutely. Yep.
All right. Not seeing any other hands raised. Claire, you want to take us home?
Yeah, so just a few announcements. This is our last meeting of the year. December is canceled since you did adopt that Housing Capital Fund recommendation. So we will cancel that December meeting unless the board would like to meet for specific reasons. But my understanding is the chair was supportive of that so long as we got our work done. So I don't see anyone raising their hand. So we'll just cancel that. All right. And then regarding chair and vice chair nominations, so we are now accepting chair and vice chair nominations for 2026. Please let me know if you would like to nominate yourself or someone else by December 19th. We will need to elect a chair and vice chair at our January 16th meeting. So we are contemplating moving away from sending a calendar invitation series and moving to a unique calendar invitation by meeting. If we do move away from the series, you will receive several calendar invitations from us. So just in case we do transition, although I'm not totally sold on the idea yet, but if we do, I wanted to make you aware and give you that heads up. And then, as is my annual tradition, I would love the opportunity to meet one-on-one with each board member in December or January. So I'll be reaching out to you with an invitation to meet soon. That's all I have, Vice Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Claire. So that brings us to the bottom of the agenda. We got through this work pretty quick. So it is the weekend before the holiday week. So we'll give everybody a little bit of time back. My hope is that everyone gets to spend the Thanksgiving holiday with the people that are the most important in their lives. We should all feel pretty blessed about having those kinds of opportunities, and also really proud of the work that we are doing to make sure our community members have the opportunity to spend time and holidays in a safe, warm, dry place. So I think that's really important work that we're doing. With that, everyone have a fantastic weekend and Thanksgiving, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.